Brendan, how's it going with you?
Good gig. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hey, congratulations on the Canyonlands for yourself.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So tell us, where did the original idea came from for the Canyonlands?
Uh, well, the original idea came from really it started with the actual land. For a long time back in my younger years, I lived in Southwest Colorado, not far from Moab, and during the off seasons of mountain ski times, we'd go down to Moab and hang out. And back then, there wasn't the crazy Jeep mecca it is now, um, and it just always been a place that has seemed really cool, really cool to me because it kind of is. And when I thought about doing this project, I first thought about where it's going to be, and it kind of evolved from like, oh, this seems like it would be a great place that you don't normally see in the horror genre. But there would be some natural tension built into the remoteness or getting lost out in these slot canyons, which I wouldn't say I've been lost, but I've definitely been on the brink of lost out there in my own personal life. And it can be a little unnerving, right? So, you lose your sense of direction. Even when we were filming out in these canyons and we'd be 100 feet from each other, someone would talk and it would echo around and you weren't really sure where they were. And, it really just started from that idea of using a really cool environment for something that was a little bit different, the same really, because it's essentially a slasher film, but
Yeah.
placed in a different environment. Yeah, like I said, it just came from my experiences, my personal experience in the area.
So for some of us who aren't familiar, Canyonlands is a real area in Utah. So basically, lots of canyons, lots of rocks, and there's a river that flows through.
Yes, the Canyonlands National Park, it's actually a national park, is just southwest of Moab, and it kind of follows the Colorado River as it goes through that part of eastern Utah down to the Grand Canyon and Arizona. And really, there's nothing from Canyonlands almost all the way to the Grand Canyon and that along the Colorado. And yeah, it's an actual area. It's Canyonlands National Park. We were as close as you could be to the park without being in the park, which we couldn't film in since you have to be like educational kind of stuff to film national parks. But we were all the stuff you see in the background is the actual Canyonlands National Park, and our river filming permit went right to the borders of the park. So that's a very real area that people can go enjoy. Arches National Park is in the area, and yeah, it's southeastern Utah. There's a lot of different terrain there. It goes from mountains to canyons to plateaus to all sorts of stuff.
Now, I understand this is your first time directing. Why did you want to challenge yourself with a sort of like an outdoor environment directing? You could have chose a much simpler type of story.
That's a good question. I guess I'm just a masochist a little bit. I live in Las Vegas and could have easily filmed this 20 minutes from my house. Lake Mead is technically the Colorado River. We could have filmed on and used establishing shots from the Canyonlands area, right? Which I think a lot of films probably would have done on our budget level. But I felt like it was really important to actually be there. It's kind of another character in the film. It really is a major theme in the film. And I just wanted to place the people there and call it my inexperience at it a little bit. The production was definitely difficult. There's no question about shooting outside for that many days. We were 20 miles away from anything on solar, bringing our own water in for a month. It was logistically difficult. I had spent years in the music production business, and it's not all that different from film a little bit. Instead of doing a festival for 3 days, you're doing a film set for 28 days or 30 days. And so I felt confident that I'll be able to do it. And we did do it, but it was definitely an experience. Good and bad, bad in the ways that we had to, just like any other film, things come up and you have to solve them. You have to figure out, you've got to stay on schedule. We got rained on, hailed on, thunder and lightning, flash floods, 60-mile-an-hour winds, we only had to shut down for one day, which is very fortuitous, really. And it rained on the only day we were scheduled to shoot inside. So we lucked out there. Yeah, I guess I really wasn't thinking when I picked that location. But in the end, we got it done and it all worked out. And I think, it was, to me, very much worth it to shoot where we did, because it really makes the film, in my opinion.
Well, let me address the other issues of the production that I actually noticed that could be difficult. There was a lot of nighttime shooting for your project. Could you talk about the lighting that actually what took place on your production, and not to mention the facing, I'm guessing cold temperatures, because I kind of felt it for Stephanie in her outfit running around in the dark.
Yeah. Well, one, we only shot at actual night at times when there was natural fire. The rest of it was shot during the day because of safety purposes. The size of our production, you just couldn't be. And these are actual, real, dangerous canyons miles away from even our base camp is where we shot. So we shot all the scenes during the day, and then changed the grading, the color grading. And then anytime you see a stars in the background or a night sky, that's all post VFX shots put in to kind of do a day for night look. When you see a campfire, that doesn't really work. So we actually shot those at night. So we did have several night shoots during it, but that was when we had natural light in the scene, because you can't really day for night it very effectively, I think, we found out. And yeah, it got cold. It wasn't supposed to be cold. May and Moab is generally 70s and 80s and sunny. And May 2019 was unseasonably cold, and we got hit with some high 30s, upper 40s. And for sure, it was difficult for the cast who had summer clothes on and, had to pretend like it's warm. But, our PAs and stuff had blankets on the side every time we cut, to cover them up and stuff like that. So you just can't control the weather, especially when your whole film is set outside. Yeah, I'll reiterate again that we got extremely lucky with and fortunate with the weather. Even though we did experience issues with it, we were able to get through. A lot of it also was, the winds. It just gets so windy in there, and it's one script day, so it's not like we can have a lot of wardrobe changes or weather changes. And so we I had to be real careful with editing, so it wasn't like calm hurricane, calm as we're doing editing the scenes together. So yeah, it was interesting out there for sure.
Now, briefly, you also obviously the plot of the story is taking these 5 kids on a river rafting expedition, and you did actually film on the Colorado River. Could you talk about that as a first-time director, on how challenging that was?
That was pretty challenging as well, and I'll credit Alex, the DP, on it. Of trying to work around it. We had multiple boats in the river, which was nice, and just towing the raft up to a pot, letting it go, filming, and just because I think we got pretty decent coverage in the raft, of all the different characters, wide shots and whatever, and that just takes time, right? Yeah, it was difficult for the editor too. Some of the audio was tough, didn't sync up right because the proximities from the equipment of the boats and stuff like that, and so Kurt had to kind of piece some things together. We obviously couldn't film on like a rapids area. It's just because it just ups the liability, the planning. It's stunts. You have to have safety teams in the water and all sorts of things. Originally, the script called for the raft to flip and kind of like have a little bit of an accident, and that's why people were on the side. And it just became too. In our budget level, it's just too difficult to like safely put that together, and safety has to be the #1 concern, right? So, but filming, we got a great weather day. I think we got some great shots on the river. We were up and down all day long, and it was I'll definitely credit the captains of our boats. The Moab jet crews were amazingly good. I would just be like, okay, let's ride on this side, and just keep ourselves out of the camera views. There's a couple of times I had to do VFX comping out of the boats behind us that the audience isn't going to see, but we were there. And yeah, that was a fun day. It was a little interesting with our drone because they're programmed to land where they take off, and when you launch them from a boat, they're going to go back and land in the river. So we had to be careful with some of the equipment for sure. If your $100,000 red weapon falls in the river, oops,
Yeah.
And one of our actors couldn't swim, never learned how to swim, so we had issues there, but we had lifeguards and safety boats and preservers and stuff like that, and I think everyone had a good time there.
Excellent. Well, let me touch upon your cast. Stephanie and Mark. I think I pronounce it. Is it Marky or Mark?
Marcus. Yeah.
So tell us why Stephanie and Marcus is perfect as your leads for a film like that.
Stephanie Barkley is her last name. Marcus is the villain. Steph was brought to me by the casting director in LA. She went through multiple auditions with numerous other people, and while we had great auditions from many prospective actors, Stephanie was just kind of on another level. She just really got into it, and I thought she was just a really good fit for the role. Dynamically, the way she carried herself. I wanted somebody who was going to bring a little bit of an attitude to the role, but still be able to, be troubled or act vulnerable at times. And she did a wonderful job. Her background is a lot of comedy, and I think she's from Chicago and was in Second City for a little bit. And some of her comedic ad libs actually made it into the film because her timing is impeccable. And it was like, oh, that's hilarious. We'll keep that in there. She just knocked it out of the park with auditions and did a fabulous job. I couldn't be more pleased with her performance, for sure.
And what about Marcus, who is the villain?
Yeah, Marcus. With films like these, you gotta really hit a home run, I think, on your villain. If your villain falls flat, your film's probably going to fall flat, I think. And I'm a product of the 80s. Be it for better or worse. And so I grew up on, the original Friday the 13th, the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And when I was thinking about this particular villain, I was kind of thinking a little bit of not necessarily Freddy Krueger, but someone who had a swagger and an attitude to him. And Marcus really brought that to the role. He doesn't have a lot of dialogue right until the end, but I wanted somebody who had a little attitude, had a little swagger, and he brought that in his auditions. He just had the look and the feel that I was going for. We had several other auditions. We had one guy who auditioned who was absolutely terrified us all in the audition room, including my assistants and everything. And but it was just more of like a cold serial killer, like dead kind of stare kind of stuff. And I just like the way that Marcus kind of brought that, like I said, a swagger to the role.
Well, Marcus was still terrifying to me.
Yeah.
Well, Brendan, let me leave you with one more thought. Since this was your first this is your directorial debut, you want to do this again, and is another horror down the road for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I am doing it again. It seems like I've learned nothing as far as shooting in tough places. The next project is kind of like a cross between Free Solo and The Thing. So we'll see how that comes out and shooting on another crazy environment. But yeah, that'll be with crossed with The Thing, which is always a movie I still can't watch that to the 1982 John Carpenter version, not the remake they did a little bit. It's always been a super terrifying film for me, and kind of crossing that over with like a Free Solo kind of thing. So
I can't wait to talk to you about that film too when you get that one done. So
we're shooting next spring on that one.
Oh, excellent. Well, hey, Brendan, thank you very much for speaking to us about the Canyonlands. It's a terrifying story, that's for sure.
Thank you so much for the interview and taking your time, Giga. Appreciate it.
Hey, not a problem. Thank you. Next time, brother.